Fabled The Spirit Lands 3-player competitive game. Come on back after the break. Hey everybody, welcome out to the show, Board Game Reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to our wonderful tabletop gaming hobby, and this video is part of a video series looking at Fabled The Spirit Lands. Now, Fabled The Spirit Lands is a very interesting game because it does allow solo play, allows cooperative play, and also does allow for competitive play. In this video, I'm going to play a 3-player competitive game. Remember, the competitive version of the game does go from 2 to 5 players. We're going to play through a full competitive game here so you can see exactly how the game plays. Now, the very cool thing about this game is it actually comes with 6 scenarios. Now, the first scenario is basically the 0-level scenario, and it's really interesting, and I really do appreciate what they did with this game because the 0-level scenario, the introductory scenario, actually makes this game a great family game because it lowers the complexity of the game just a little bit, removes some of the more complex allies from the game, and also lowers some of the requirements and removes a little bit of the things that could add to the complexity of the game. So that's one thing that I really do appreciate about it. But I'm pretty sure lots of other video channels out there are probably going to do coverage of the 0 scenario and the first scenario itself. So me and myself, to show you extra gameplay and show you what's really cool about this game, I'm going to play through the second scenario. A couple different reasons why I want to do that. One, like I said, I'm sure every other YouTube channel out there is going to play through the first scenario because it's, easy to do that. I'm going to go ahead and play through one of the more complex scenarios to show you how much the game complexity can evolve and show you one of the great hallmarks of things that I appreciate about this game is how the scenarios keep evolving the gameplay and adding to the challenge. One of the cool things about the second scenario is it's not quite as basic with the scoring as you're going to see with the other scenarios, such as the first scenario and some of the other later scenarios in the game. In the second scenario, instead of just trying to have the most books of the sun to go ahead and gain victory, what you need to do is you as a player need to have the most books of the prairies to score 2 victory points. Whoever has the most books of the mountains is going to score 2 victory points. Whoever has the most books of the forest will score 2 victory points. And then every single player will score 1 victory point for every book of the sun they have. So it adds to the complexity of the game, which is something I really do greatly appreciate because it makes players make other decisions and also allows the game to have more of a robust feel to it because you are actually competing for different resources at different times, and you're never going to feel like you're going to have a wasted turn because you can't quite get to the resources of the books of the sun you're needing. It's going to open up other strategies and other tactics. So what we have the game set up for here is a 3-player game. We have the red, we have the purple, and we have the orange player. Now to go over all the allies we have here, and then we're going to move right into the prologue and move into the gameplay itself. Now, like I said, this is going to be a gameplay video. If you want to learn how to play the game, see a quick overview, see how the cooperative game works, or just see my review of the game, check out the other videos in the series. Let's go ahead and hit the table here and show you how to play, or show you how the game plays itself as a 3-player competitive game playing through scenario number 2. So this scenario, like I said, is set up for a 3-player game, which means we only get to play through 9 chapters. At the end of the 9th chapter, we're going to move into the epilogue, and then we're going to figure out who the winner of the game is going to be. Now, I'm going to try to keep all these components laying face down. I believe it's going to be easier to see on the camera up here if everything is laying face down. I am going to go ahead and set everything up here. I will go over all the allies we have so you can understand some of the strategies we're taking here. Let's go and start over here with the red player themselves, who has a snake queen. I'm just going to read these abilities off, give you a quick 1 or 2 sentences of how that's going to work, and then we're going to move over to the next one here really quick. First one we have here is going to be the snake queen. It says, during your action phase, place 1 or more snake queen tokens. We start with 2. We'll get a 3rd one if we happen to level up. We're going to place 1 or more of our snake queen tokens from your reserve on any different locations where she has no tokens. After your sage visits a fabled place in a location with a snake queen token, receive 1 book of prairies, or the sage takes 1 extra movement. That can be really powerful. Extra give you movement or actually gives you resources. Again, I'm playing a second scenario where books of the prairies can definitely be very valuable. Next up, we're going to have the soul guardian themselves. It says, after your sage returns to your reserve, I can either exchange 1 book of prairies and 1 book of mountains to go ahead and gain 1 book of forest. It does require me to have 2 total books, 1 of each to go ahead and gain that, but if I happen to have that, I'm going to gain books of forest. Now remember, books of forest are 1 level below the books of the sun, meaning that can actually be a very powerful ability. And then finally, we have the Herald of the Lands. Before your oblivion phase, declare movement in a location type different from the one you declared early in this turn. So for example, I've declared prairie, I've now declared either mountains or forests. All players, sages, and locations of the declared type must now take 1 movement each. So this allows us, potentially allow our sages to move 3, or you'll see how that can work out in a really interesting way. So now that we've described how all of our allies are going to work, let's go and start the prologue, and the prologue is going to start with the red player. So look at everything we have here. We know that we have the ability to take some extra prairie resources if we need them, so we don't need to be as worried about prairie resources in the beginning of the game because we're going to gain extra ones thanks to that Snake Queen. So it almost be nice for me to kind of pick a starting land that doesn't need as many prairies and might give us some extra different books of knowledge that we will need to gain those extra victory points. So we have our prairies, we have our mountains, and we have our forest here. I think for the red player, what we're going to do is we're actually going to start with a book of the forest, or actually visit the forest to create our spirit lands. So remember, during the prologue, we only discard 1 book based on a land type. We're not going to discard extra prairies based on multiples of certain land types. So we don't need to worry about that in the beginning, but we're going to discard 1 book of the forest to go ahead and add this forest into the board. That forest will be immediately replaced with a new forest card, meaning that the other players can start planning their turns, which is something that's really great about this game. It allows you to have other players actively engaged in the game, so players aren't feeling like their turns are not really doing anything. You'll see how that also works when we do the movement part of the turn. So since we picked the forest, we're going to put one of our first sages into the forest over on the 1 spot. We said this specific forest card has 3 different fabled locations. Now, in the earlier stages of the video, I kind of cover some of these fabled locations. As we move further into the video, I'm going to kind of speed it up, and we're kind of going to gloss over these different locations. But in the beginning, I want to explain to you how this is all going to work. So if we look down here, right here, if we manage to get to the number 5 spot on this forest tile, we're going to be able to visit the Hermitage. Now, the Hermitage allows us, if we make it here, we can actually take one of our sages and put them in the starting location on the next spirit land in the row of the spirit land right here. That can be a very, very powerful ability, because remember, the more sages we get on the board without spending our resources to do so allows us to convert these resources into those victory points we need so greatly at the end of the game. Next up, we have the Fairy Inn. Now, the Fairy Inn is going to allow us to gain prairies based on how many different location cards have our sages on us. For every location card that has at least 1 of our sages on us, we're going to gain 1 book of the prairies. Early game, not that great. Later game, that can actually give us a lot of prairie books if we need them. And again, we're playing that second scenario. We're having more prairie books than any other player can be worth 2 victory points. So that's definitely a good thing to have. And the final thing we will see here at the House of Roots and the number 10 allows us to gain 1 book of the forest. Remember, we spent 1 book of the forest to get this card in play, so it's effectively going to pay for itself. But now we also see that we have 1 more location, the location number 12, which is the terrain portal, which allows us to move any one of these location cards anywhere in the spirit land as long as we have 1 of our sages on it. Now remember, if you watch the tutorial video, you'll remember that's very, very important to make sure that your sages are creating paths that they can keep going down, because the longer you can stay in the spirit land, like I said earlier, the less resources you're spending to bring more of the spirit lands into play, meaning that you have a higher chance of winning the game. Don't forget that we don't start with any events in play. We don't get our first event until the second chapter here. So let's go ahead and continue on with a purple player who needs to figure out exactly which one of these land masses they want to play. Well, remember, their ability is after you return to the reserve, you can exchange 1 prairie and 1 mountain for a forest. So I'm thinking if we get some mountains or some forests, that way we can guarantee, 1 mountain or a prairie, we can guarantee that we can keep trading in and gain those forests and using the abilities of the Soul Guardian. So I'm looking at cards right now that give us mountains, and I'm also looking at cards that give us prairies. So I'm looking at this card right here, and I think that this prairie card might be a great one for us to start with. 2 reasons on this one. 1, this one's allow us to, actually that'd be a bad one because I'd allow them to keep going. Let's not do that. I think we would actually, no, actually I will do that, but what we'll do is we'll put it to the left. That way we're not creating a path for the red player. We'll try to anticipate, hoping that we're going to build a path that'll actually open up for us in the future. So we need to spend 1 book of prairies to bring this prairie into play. We'll put our sage over here on the number 1 slot. We will go ahead and replace that prairie card so the next player in player order can start figuring out what land they want to bring into play. And let's go ahead and cover all these locations. So we have a couple really easy locations here. We have location 7, which is going to give us a choice of 1 of 2 things we may do. The House of Stones will allow us to take 2 books of mountains if we visit the spot and actually go to that fabled location. And then the Universal Academy allows us to perform up to 4 conversions. Now, conversions are very, very powerful. Remember, every time you convert 2 books, it turns into the tier and 1 level up. You can do that 4 times. So if you had enough resources, you could effectively turn prairies all the way into Books of Sun. as long as you have enough resources to do so. So that can actually be a very powerful location. So when we get there, we actually have a really good choice. Are we going to gain book those mountains, or are we going to do those conversions? Well, it's going to matter what resources we have when we get to that point. Let's go to move on to the orange player who figured out which kind of land they want to bring into play. And I think I already know which one I want to do. We're looking at this mountain right here. So we're going to spend one mountain really, really quick. And we'll bring this mountain into play and replace that mountain card right here. That way the next player in player order can start planning out their lands. Now, we are looking at ways that we can put this out that's going to form a path for us, but not create a path for the other players. I am thinking that if we put this right here, we block off red from creating another path, and we can eventually possibly do some other paths for us, especially if we can get something that can kind of go like this. Although another option is if I put this all the way to the left, we can kind of probably figure out a way to move down the path all the way that way. And I think that's going to be the smarter play for us right here, right now. So we spent our mountains to bring this mountain into play. We'll put this all the way to the left. And I was looking at that for the resources, but that would allow us to continue the path. And this card is the one that was in play. Yeah, I'm going to stick with the decision I made, and hopefully we'll figure out to get a path that kind of will snake up from the lower left to the upper right so we can continue the path. That's going to be our hopeful eventual goal. We'll put one sage on the level 1 path, and we'll put one sage over here on the level 1 on the dead end path. And that will be the prologue for all of our players. Now we get to go to the starting of the new chapter, and before we do that, the starting player always advances a time marker, and now we're in chapter number 1. Nothing happens in chapter number 1, but we only have 9 chapters to go ahead and make all of our decisions, gain the most victory points, and win the game. Actually, before we go any further, let me just forgot to do this because I was doing it earlier. So this is a gain a forest book, and that's gain a 2 mountains book location. That's why I took that mountain space. So we've advanced the turn, so now we get to go over to the red player who gets to start the game, and the very first thing you get to do is their action phase, where you need to pick one of the 4 actions that are available to them. So as a red player, we are deciding that we're actually going to take the action of adding a land into the row right here, into the spirit land, because there's actually a land card there that not only can we get into play, but it's also going to give us a lot of benefits. I'm looking at this mountain card right here. So this mountain card right here will continue the path for our red sage because it connects the path here fully, which is very, very nice for us. Additionally, it's going to give us movement, and it's also going to give us more prairie books, which is something we need because we only have 2 left. Remember, whoever has the most prairie books gets 2 victory points in the game. So that's the card we're going to play. It's going to cost us 1 mountain to bring it into play because it's a mountain card. Additionally, since there's already 1 mountain card in play, or 1 mountain in the spirit land, we need to spend 1 book of prairies to bring that into play. We'll flip over the next mountain cards so the next players in order can start planning their turn. And since that was our action, let's go ahead and put our sages onto the board. And then we get to move on to our movement phase, where we get to pick a specific location, and all of our sages in that location get to move. But before we go to our movement phase, I actually think this might be a great time to go ahead and use my power of my ally, the Snake Queen, because this specific tile right here does not have a lot of movement on it. It only has a 5 and a 4, which means I can get my sages off that pretty darn quickly. The sooner I get my sages off, that means that I will get those tokens back even quicker, so it might be a good idea to actually use both these tokens right now. I think I'm actually going to do so because this is going to give us books of prairies, or it might even give us movement. So I'll place this snake token right there, and I will place this snake token right there. So when we visit those locations, that's going to help us. And now that I've done that, now we're going to move to the movement phase. I'm going to announce mountains. So since we're announcing mountains, that means all the sages on mountains are going to move. We're going to move my sages first, which are going to move 2 spaces, 1, 2, and 1, 2. And then the yellow or orange player, they're going to move all their sages 1, since they also happen to be on mountain spaces. That's not going to allow any of us to move into any places of power, and we're A-okay with that. But at least it's going to move us down further on the mountain track in the Spirit Lands, meaning we're closer to visiting those fabled places. Now, normally we now move into the Oblivion phase, but there's not going to be Oblivion phase because none of these Spirit Land locations are missing any of their sages. Every one of them has at least 1 sage on it. So it's actually going to end the red player's turn, and now we get to go to the purple player. Now, the purple player is seeing that they actually have the ability to go ahead and create a longer path for them. Like I've said multiple times, keeping your sages in the Spirit Lands as long as possible is going to keep those resources that you need for other purposes that you need. So I think we are going to purchase this forest right here and put this forest in the Spirit Land. And the reason why we're going to do this is it's going to allow us to create a continuous path. So to put a forest into play, we need to spend 1 book of forest knowledge. And since there's already 1 forest in place, it's also going to cost us 1 prairie to do so. we'll simply move these tokens over like this, and we'll put the forest down just like this, increasing the length of the spirit land, but also increasing the length of the path that this purple sage can take. At this point, they can make it all the way to the end of the spirit land right here, just as long as they don't get blockaded on their journey in their efforts to do so. So we'll add them down one space down just like that, and that's our action phase. Remember, we have to pick one of the 4 actions. Now we move to the movement phase, and we need to pick a land type where we want to move. I'm going to go nice and easy, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the prairies. The reason why I'm picking the prairies is because it's going to help me move, and it's not going to help any of my other opponents move, so I'm going to gain the most benefit. So we will move 2 spaces on the prairies. Again, bring us closer to those resources that we greatly need. We don't have any oblivion phase, so now we get to move over to the orange player. So the orange player, for their turn, they need to figure out exactly what they want to do among the 4 different actions. Remember, you pick one of the 4. We can do a conversion, we can do a movement, we can add a spirit land, or we can gain 2 books of prairies. We don't really need books of prairies quite yet, but I am looking at this forest right here because I think that's going to allow us to create a very nice journey for us, because this is going to start at the bottom and go to the top, which means we will complete a complete path. Now, I think this might be a little bit too early to build the map this big, but I also think that's going to be a fantastic move, and I'd be foolish to let that move away from me, because I think that is going to open up a lot of options for the orange player, because they can effectively move down the entire path as long as things move in their favor. So it's going to cost us 1 book of forest for the forest itself. Since there's already 2 forests in play, that means we need to discard 2 books of prairies, which is going to cover the cost of bringing that book of forest into play. We'll move over here down on the 1 section right here, and now we got to make a decision, because now we move to the movement phase. Now we have lots of options that we can do here because of our nice ability of the Herald of the Lands. And I think I'm going to abuse the Herald of the Lands here in a very good way, because that's going to help us the most. So remember, the Herald of the Lands allows all the sages to make 1 point of movement as long as I pick a different movement type than what I picked before. So if I pick mountains as my original movement, which I would like to do, and then I pick forest as my secondary, I can advance down the track right here, which isn't going to affect the red and the purple quite as much. So we're going to do our initial movement right here, and since we're picking mountains, we're going to move from 2 to 4, from 2 to 4, and we have not visited any fabled places quite yet. Then the red gets to move 1, and then they get to move 1, which will allow them to move into the fabled place right there. We'll cover their movement when we get to the fabled location section in just a moment. Now that we've handled that movement, we get to go over here. It says before oblivion phase, declare movement in a location type different from the one you declared earlier this turn. I am thinking what we will do is we will declare moving in the forest by using that power. But before we do so, we need to resolve this location, this fabled location right here. So this fabled location is going to allow the red player, by visiting it, they're going to get 4 points of movement, plus they're going to get 1 book of prairies thanks to the power of the Snake Queen. Or the other option is we can just take the 1 point of movement, and since this is a dead-end path, that allows us to pull that sage back, put them in our available location of our available sages, and if they're available sages, then we use those sages to bring them back out onto the land again. So that's actually something I need to decide here. But before we do anything, I need to handle my 4 points of movement. So I'll do 1 point of movement right here, and then we will go visit that location. And then I will do 2, 3, 4 points of movement just like that. And then I am going to use the Snake Queen's power to get the 1 point of movement, removing this sage from the spirit land and putting them back in my available pool of sages of abilities I can handle here. Then, since I still have a sage in a fabled location right now, I am thinking they will gain the book, not take the movement because I don't want to go off the map yet. I'm hoping I can get another location right here, which allow me to build on as a red player, because the red player gets to go next. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is we're just going to take the 4 books of prairies, just like that, and take 1 more book of prairies due to the Snake Queen's power. I think that's what we'll do. I think that's going to be the best option for us right now. Remember, all this is happening during the orange player's turn because all these players are visiting all these fabled different locations, which is something that I really appreciate about this game. All the players are staying in the game, even if it's not your turn currently. So that was it pretty much for the orange player. Now we get to go to the orange player who gets to use their special card of the Herald of the Lands. They were thinking about announcing forest, but now if they announce forest, that's going to help the red player. But it's also going to help us, but not as much as we wanted to. It's only going to move us 1 path down. It's not going to bring us close enough. But sometimes you got to take the gamble. So I'm going to go ahead and announce force from the Herald of the Lands. Advance 1, which will allow this guy to advance 1, which will allow this guy to advance 1, which will also allow him to visit that sage right there. Now this location, this Fabled location, is a hermitage, which allows us to add 1 sage onto the next track on the next location over. So I will simply add my sage right there onto the path. And I think that's going to help me a lot, because now anytime mountains are announced, I get to make extra movement on the mountains. I think it's going to help me quite a bit. So now we've visited that location. All of the movement has happened, and now we get moved to the oblivion phase for the orange player. There are no spirit lands that are missing any sages or without sages at all, so we're not going to have an oblivion phase. So now we get to go all the way back over to the first player, and before the action goes, we will advance the time marker into Chapter 2, and we're going to get our very first event. So the very first event we will get is we're going to get the event called See the Future. So there's additional payments for adding a location from the top of the deck is 1 prairie less. Once per turn during your action phase, you may secretly look at the top of any one location deck. Well, that's kind of fun and interesting. So now this event kind of shakes things up, because now it kind of influences what we're going to do. Instead of looking at just the available face-up locations or taking a gamble on one of the face-down ones, now the face-down locations are no longer gambles, which is pretty darn cool. And not only that, if that happens to be a really good space, we can use a second ability to make the cost go down for us. And I think that's exactly what the red player is going to do. So during the action phase, we're going to look at this top card right here of the prairie deck and see exactly what it is. And we got exactly what we needed, a top left to a lower right, because we want to put it right over here for our red sages so they can continue their path. That's exactly what we want to do. So we don't have to show this to the player, because we get to look at this and figure out exactly what it is and figure out if it's a card we want. Now, as part of our action phase, we got to take one of the 4 actions. We're going to pick the action of adding a location onto the board. So we're going to do that, and we're going to pick this face down card right here. Now, since we're picking the face down one, it's going to cost us 1 less prairie. So generally this would cost us 1 prairie for the prairie card, plus 1 more for the fact that there's already a prairie in play. So since we have -1 to the cost, we only have to spend 1 prairie to bring this one into play. It'll go right here along the spirit path to the right. We will take one of our sages and add them onto the spirit path, and just like that. And that's actually a really great move for us. Now, we don't have any other allies that we use our abilities of yet, quite yet. So now we're going to move on to the movement phase. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pick mountains. Another option would be forest, which would not be too bad for us, because we pick forest, we would get 1, 2, 3 books of prairies, which is not terrible, but we already have 5 books of prairies, so I don't think we need more prairie books just yet. So I think I'm going to announce mountains. It's not going to help the orange player quite as much, and it's actually going to help us quite a bit. So let's go and do mountains as our announced train that we're going to move on. We'll start with the orange player, move 1, and then they will move 1 just like that. And then we will go ahead and move on to us. We will move 1, 2, because we have a continuous path. And then we'll go 1, 2, just like that. Now that we've done our movement, we don't have any special ally powers. There's no oblivion that needs to occur, so now we get to go over to the purple player's turn. So the purple player, during their turn, they are kind of in a tough situation, because basically every single terrain type out there is going to require at least 1 book of prairies for the knowledge, even with the discount that we're going to get from the ability that's in play, because there are at least 2 of every single terrain type that's currently out there on the board. So I don't think we're going to add any extra terrain on the board, so that leaves us with conversion. Not going to happen. Moving 1 sage or gaining 2 books of prairies. I think gaining the 2 books of prairies right now might be our best option. That way we're not stuck in a position where we don't have books of prairies on later turns, because that could be the worst thing for us to happen. So that's going to be our action for our turn. Now we get to announce movement. If we announce movement in prairies, it's going to help the red player. If we announce movements in forest, it's going to help both of the other players, but it's not going to help them that much. And what it'll do is allow us to gain a couple more books of prairies, which could be a decent thing to do. I think that's actually what we're going to do. So we're going to announce movement in forest. We'll go with 1, 2, and yes, we'll move into the Fabled place. Orange will move 1 in the forest here, and red will move 1 in the forest, just like that. Now that we've done the movement, now we're going to go ahead and visit the sages. So this location is going to be the Fairy Inn, which allows us to gain books of prairies based on the total amount of locations that have our sages on it. Unfortunately, it's only going to be 2, but sometimes 2 is better than none. So I'll take a 3 and put a 1 back, so it puts us all the way up to 4 books of prairies. There's no oblivion that's going to happen, so now we get to go over to the orange player. Now, the orange player is kind of in the same position right now because of the fact that they only have one book of prairies. So their turns are not being quite as efficient as they need to or should be or could be. So let's see if we make it work out more in our favor. Now, obviously, we're not going to put another land out because we can't do it. We're not going to perform a conversion, so our options are to move one space or to go ahead and gain 2 prairies. I think what we're going to do is move one space, because if we do this just right, we're going to move closer to getting the resources that we want, which would be the forest and the mountains, which is something I think that I really want to make happen here. So we will take, actually I could be smart about this, take the 1 and do the 2, which would give us the 2 books of mountains. And I am very, very tempted to do that. That could work better than doing that, because this is only going to give us 2 books. That'll also give us 2 books, but these 2 books right here are way, way more valuable. So I will perform 1 movement just like this. That'll be it for our action phase. Now we get to move on to our movement phase, where we get to announce movement in mountains. So we're moving mountains, we're going to move 1, 2, and this will move 1, 2, which will allow us to visit that fabled place right there. Additionally, the red player in this mountain over here gets to move 1 space, not gaining a benefit. So the orange player is able to help themselves without helping the other players too much. So we visit this location right here. We're going to resolve this fabled location, which is going to give us 2 books of the mountains. Not too bad. We're actually doing A-OK. And we visit that fabled location now. No other fabled locations to take care of. There are no cards enter oblivion. So now we get to go ahead and move on to the next chapter. We'll advance the chapter marker into chapter 3. And now all of our players get to gain an ally. So generally the way this would work, and this is the way we should be doing, is every single player is going to grab 3 allies, and they're going to pick one of those 3 allies, and that's going to be the ally they're going to gain. I don't want to slow down this video that much, and I kind of want to give myself a little bit of a challenge to see how well I can do with a little bit of chaos. Sometimes that's a little bit fun with me. When I'm making these videos, I enjoy making a little bit of chaos for myself, because it allows me to challenge myself and actually makes me better at these games. So instead of doing that, for these 2 players, they're going to be stuck with the cards I'm giving them. For the red player, I'm going to show you exactly how the game would normally play. I just want to show you how the game should play versus giving myself a little bit of a challenge. So the 3 allies we would gain is we would gain the Nether King, we would gain the Guiding Light, or we would gain the Conjurer. Conjurer is while you're visiting a fabled place in a prairie, reposition it. If it links to a location on the right after being repositioned, receive 1 prairie. That's actually a really good ally to have, especially early in the game. When Guiding Light joins you, take 2 forest cards, revealed and or turned from the top of the deck, and put them in your reserve. When adding a forest, you may choose a forest from your reserve and add it for 1 forest or 2 mounds with no additional payment. Then your sage in this forest takes 2 steps. That is such a great card, no matter what time you're playing in the game. And then finally, we have the Nether King, as after adding a location also in the prologue, place 1 Nether King token from your reserve there. After your sage leaves a location with Nether King token, return this token to your reserve, receive 1 prairie, and distribute 2 movement among your sages. This is kind of the fun thing about this game. All the allies in this game are actually really cool, and what you're trying to do is get the best synergy from your allies. They're actually what's going to help you a lot in this game. I'm liking Guiding Light. I'm also liking the Conjurer. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Conjurer, because I am going to visit at least a couple fabled places in the prairies, I'm pretty sure, with the Conjurer, because I have lots of prairies. I'm in the prairies, and I think I can make this happen. Although, part of me is telling me that the Guiding Light, at this point, looking at this stage of the game, would probably be the better ally. I'm actually willing to bet it would be the better ally, but I think what I'm going to do is, just for fun, I'm going to take the Conjurer at this point. Again, I'm not positive it's the best decision, but hey, we'll have fun with it. Then the purple player is going to gain the Forest Giant, which means we now need to pull out the Forest Giant board. And then finally, the orange player is going to gain the Library Gnome. So, Library Gnome is while your sage is visiting a universal fabled place, perform 1 conversion or receive 2 books of prairies. That is actually really, really darn good. Those are 4 universal fabled places in the game, so that can actually be pretty darn powerful. The Forest Giant. When the Forest Giant joins you, place his board side up 1 up and put his marker at the track start. So side 1 is up, track marker is at the start, just like that. Each time a location leaves play, move your marker up 1. During the action phase, one of your sages takes as many movement as shown next to the marker, then return the marker to the track start. The icon, whether it's prairies, mountains, or forests, indicates the sage can move along unlinked main paths while taking these steps. That is extremely powerful. Allows you to actually jump from tile to tile or from location to location without needing the locations to be connected. It's really super nice. Now, the red player for their turn actually has a lot of great options thanks to gaining the Conjurer, and I think it's actually going to work out really, really well for them if I can take advantage of it as well as possible. Now, the See the Future is still in play, which is nice, but I don't think I want to build the land anymore quite just yet at this point. I think what I want to do is go ahead and just take 1 point of movement. I could do some conversion, which would also be pretty smart, but I don't think we're quite ready for conversion this time yet. So I'll move here, which will allow us to move into this fabled land right here as the 1 point of movement during my action phase. So since I'm visiting this location, I'm going to either gain 1 point of movement or I'm going to go ahead and gain 1 extra prairie. I think I'm actually going to take that 1 point of movement. So I'm going to gain 4 prairies. So let's take 4 prairie books just like that. And then the Snake Queen is going to give us my extra 1 point of movement. That's going to allow us to pop onto this location just like that on the 1. Now I have 2 of my sages on the 1. And I've also opened up this location right here, which means it's going to fall into oblivion here in just a moment. So now we're going to move over to the movement part of our turn since we've taken our action. And I'm going to announce prairie. So purple move 1 since it's not the purple player's turn. And red is going to move 2. So we'll go from the 2 to the 4. And we'll go from the 1 all the way to the 3 with both of these sages. Remember, we got 2 of our sages right there. Now that all the movement is done, nobody's visiting any place of the power, now we get to have the oblivion. So since oblivion is going to happen, these 2 tokens are going to come back over here for our Snake Queen to use. And this card will fall into the oblivion. And remember, when cards go into oblivion, they are removed from the game. They're never shuffled back in. But now the Forest Giant gets to activate their power. And the cycle is going to advance 1, which means we get 1 extra point of movement on the purple player's turn when they get to activate their turn, which is going to be really, really good for them. And also notice that we managed to make that path work out for us in our benefit. So also that's kind of a double move right there. So we're also waiting for the ability to visit these special places right here. That's also going to pan out for us very, very well. But that's it for the red player's turn. We now get to go to the purple player's turn, who, remember, is going to get 1 extra point of movement. And this is where I realized I forgot to reset off of the fabled place when I did that movement last turn. Not a big deal. Very, very easy to fix right there. So on our action turn, we are going to take 1 of the 4 different actions that are available to us. So I need to figure out which one of those actions are going to help us the most. I don't think movement's going to do a lot for us. We basically need to get our sages out there on the board as quick as possible. And I think that's what I need to focus on while taking advantage of everything that I have here. So if I get some of our sages back to the reserve, I can get some books for us. So I need to do as much movement as possible on any card that has very, very limited movement. And I do see a prairie card that doesn't have a lot of movement on it. And I think I can actually position it in a way that is going to allow us not to have any sages doing any movement at all. And don't forget, we still have the See the Future out there as well. So I think before we do anything, I'm going to use the See the Future to look at the next card. And I'm hoping it does not have a lot of movement on it. Fortunately, it has a lot of movement on it, and it's not positioned quite the way I wanted to, so it'll go back to the top of the deck. And that means we are going to take this card right here, which is going to be cost us 1 prairie for the card itself. Plus, since there's 2 prairies out there right now, I'm going to spend 2 more prairies to do so, which means I'm going to get 1 prairie back only. I think what I want to do is put this right here. No, sorry, right there. That's what I was thinking about doing. So it really doesn't matter as long as, so here's the trick. I think what I'm going to do is put it right here like this. I think that's going to be the best spot to move it. Because I'm trying to allow my sages to fall out of the spirit land so I can take advantage of the soul guardian as quickly as possible. So we'll do it just like that. Yeah, that's not going to do what I want to do. I think I'm going to have to put it over here. Not quite as advantageous, but I wanted to get over there, but I think that's going to work out for us better. I think that'll work out better. So we'll take our sage, we'll put our sage right here on the track, just like that. So our action was bringing 1 more land into the spirit land, and now we get to take advantage of our forest giant. So we will take 1 point of movement to move down just like that, and I think that's going to help us a decent amount. probably going to help red a lot, because now we get to move over to the movement phase, and we're going to announce movement in the prairies itself. So the movement in the prairies, we will move 1, 2. We'll move 1, 2, and we get to decide which one of these fabled places we will visit. Before I do that, let me go ahead and finish. The red player is going to move 1, and we know they're going to move right there because that's the obvious thing they want to do. And then, because of their special conjure power, and then we'll advance those down there like this. So they visited that, so now I need to figure out which one of these fabled places I want to visit as a purple player. Do I want to gain 3 prairies, since I'm only down to 1, or do I want to get 3 points of movement? I'm thinking 3 points of movement is actually going to be the best thing I can take, because that'll allow us to get closer to this location, and it can also allow me to get this guy onto the forest space and also allow us to visit locations. So I'm thinking movement right now is probably our best option, so I'm going to go ahead and take the movement just like that. So we have to resolve now, and what we'll do is we'll resolve this location right here to gain 3 points of movement. I'll take 1 point of movement, and we'll slide over just like that. Then we have 2 points of movement left. Now remember, we need to resolve the entire fabled location before we move on to any other fabled locations. And I do have 2 points of movement left. Let's see, you're on the 6. I think what I will do is, oops, wrong color. Oh, that would have been bad. I think what I'm going to do is I will take 1, which will allow him to come off the map. I'll put it over here on the Soul Guardian so I don't forget to do that ability. So now I have 1 point of movement left. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right there with that point of movement. Now that we resolve this, it says after you return, one of your sages returns to your reserve, exchange 1 prairie and 1 mountain for a forest. So I will take that, and then we will gain a forest, which will help us get closer to those books of the sun right there. Now that we finished with that specific fable location, now we get to resolve this one, which is going to give us 2 more books of the mountains. So as long as I get a prairie, I can go ahead and use my Soul Guardian ability again here pretty darn quick if I move just right. So that's all the movement. We're done with the movement. This card will go into the oblivion just like that, which means that this will advance the Forest Giant again, because anytime a card goes into oblivion, the Forest Giant power is going to activate. Now we'll go ahead and slide these over just like this, and that will be it for the purple player's turn. It's now time for the orange player to take their turn. We actually have a decent amount of options and decisions on what we want to do. So the orange player, for their turn, for their action, they're just going to take 1 point of movement. They'll move on this space, which will allow them to visit that Fabled space right there. We're going to resolve that Fabled space right there, which will give us 1 forest, which will be very great for us, because now we're about ready to do a conversion to go ahead and get a Book of the Sun. You'll see how that works in just a moment. So now we've done our action, let's go ahead and perform our movement. We're going to announce mountains, which will mean that this guy will move 1, 2 over here on this. And since he's on the edge of the path, he is simply going to walk off the path, and that'll be it for the movement because there's no other mountains. This mountain card will go into oblivion, removed from the game, never to be seen again, and that is it for the movement. But remember, every time one land goes into oblivion, the Forest Giant powers activate right there. Now, before I did that oblivion, what I should have did is remember the Herald of the Lands power, and I am going to go ahead and activate the Herald of the Lands power, which I would have did, because it's part of my strategy. And I will announce forest, and we'll move 1 space in the forest. Unfortunately, that's going to help the purple a little bit, and that's also going to help red, who now gets to move over here. Now that oblivion should not have happened yet. I'm sorry I skipped ahead a little bit there, but you do see how this works. That's pretty darn simple how that works anyways. So now red is going to go ahead and resolve that location. They have sages on 2 different locations, so by visiting the Fairy Inn, they will simply go ahead and gain 2 books of prairies for the red player, who has more books of prairies than anybody, so effectively they have 2 victory points, which is pretty darn decent for them. And then these 2 players are kind of tied at 1 and 1. Actually, they have 2 total either. So actually, right now, if the game was to come to an end, we'd have 2 victory points, 2 victory points, and 2 victory points. We'd have a tie, and we'd have to go to the tiebreaker. So that is it for all the movement. For the orange player, now we get to go ahead and advance the turn track to chapter number 4, and now we get to go back to the red player, who I forgot to resolve. Let's back that up just a little bit. I forgot to resolve that. So let's back this up. I apologize, I completely forgot to do that. This would have resolved right here just like that, which would have given us 1 book of mountains. I'm sorry about making that mistake. And since I visited a fabled space like that, I can activate the power of the Conjurer, which means I want to reposition it. And what I would have done is Luckily, this is not going to mess anything up badly. We're not going to have to retcon too many things, because this is exactly what I would have did, is put us right in position to go right back to the forest. So since I position a way that is going to continue the path right there, the rest of the power is going to go off, and I'm going to receive 1 book of prairies. Sorry about the retcon. I made a minor mistake. I do apologize. Now we can go ahead and go back to starting the next turn with the red player right here, who has tons and tons of options. And it's actually going to be a pretty darn easy decision for us. We're going to go ahead and do our action as a conversion. So we'll take 2 books of prairies to go ahead and gain 1 mountain. And then we will take 2 more books of prairies. And we will take 1 more book of mountains. So that's going to be our complete action phase for the red player. Now we get to pick our movement, and we are going to select prairies for our movement. Prairies will allow them, that's a dead end, so they will come off the map. Nice and easy. And then for us, we will move 1, 2, and then we will go 1 and decide to continue on, or we will decide to visit the Fabled Place. We are going to visit the Fabled Place with both of our sages, because that is a much smarter thing to do here. So now that movement has been completed, we will go ahead and gain 2 more books of the mountains. I'll simply take a 3 and put a 1 back to make this super duper easy. Now both of these sages have completed that, and now that we visit a fabled location, I can now use the conjurer's power again. So if I position this just right, which I am going to do, since this continues the path, we will gain 1 book of prairies from the conjurer's power. We're actually doing really, really good as a red player right now. We're kind of taking advantage of all of our abilities, and we're playing very, very smartly. The only thing I should have done differently is put the snake wing tokens out, but I didn't think about that. Oh well, let's go ahead and move on and not worry about that too much. That's the end of the red player's turn. Now we get to go to the purple player. Of course, let's do Oblivion, and then purple is going to probably add a land, because they do not have a lot of sages on the board at all right now. We basically have 1 sage on the board. We do have the ability to possibly add land, because there are no mountains. I could add a mountain as long as that mountain is going to give us a lot of benefits. Let's see here. This will allow us to do a conversion, which could be very, very nice, but we can't use it quite yet unless we get the resources. That will give us the resources we need. So I think we are going to go ahead and add a mountain onto the board. So since that's our action, we will spend a book of mountains to go ahead and do so. And now I need to figure out exactly where this is going to be most beneficial for us. I'm thinking this is going to be most beneficial for us all the way back at the beginning of the Spirit Lands, because that's going to allow us to get the most potential for movement. Although, if I do that, I can't use my Soul Guardian's ability, and I'm not breaking up paths for other players. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and do a little bit of denial for the red player who thinks they're easily going to follow into a forest space. Let's make that not happen for the red player. Let's go ahead and make the red player's life a little bit more challenging, because that's probably a smarter play. Let's do a little bit of denial and place our 2 sages out there on the board just like that. Now remember, the Forest Giant's power is going to activate during the action phase, so even though my action was adding that specific landmass into the Spirit Land just like this, we still get our Giant's power to go off, which is going to give us 2 points of movement for our sages. So I'm thinking the most efficient thing at this point would be to take advantage of this and this if I can make that happen. So I'm going to take my 2 points movement, move this sage from the 1 to the 3 right here. Then during our turn for our movement, we're going to go ahead and announce mountains as our movement location. So I move 1 and we move a point of movement, not a big deal. And we'll move 2 right there. So we'll go ahead and resolve that Fabled Place, and we will go ahead and gain 3 books, which we will save because we will want to spend them over here at this universal location, which is going to be Universal Temple, which will allow us to turn these 3 books of prairie into 2 books of mountains, which is actually going to be one heck of a great conversion. I think that's going to be the smarter action to take. So there's no Oblivion this time that I forgot. So now we get to go over to the orange player's turn, who actually has quite a few options of what they want to do. I think the orange player, they're actually looking pretty darn decent for where they're at right now. We're actually going to take our action, we're going to do a conversion. So we're going to take 2 of these books of mountains, which will convert into a forest. That is one of our 2 conversions. Then for our second conversion, we're going to convert 2 of these forests into one book of knowledge, which means they're actually effectively the first player on the victory point track at this point. Granted, we are playing the second scenario, so it's not quite as easy as it is for them to get that, but we do have a couple victory points for us right now, so it's actually pretty darn good. I think now that we're done with that, now what we're going to decide to do is we're going to move in force, because that's the only location we can pick. So we will pick 1, and I think we're going to bypass that with this specific sage, and we'll move up to 2 right there. This sage will move 1, 2, and move in right there, and we will gain only 1 book of prayers because we only have sages on one of the lands out there right now. So I give us 1 book of sage, or 1 book of prairies, and that sage will move back there like that. That'll end the yellow player's turn. We will go ahead and advance, make sure there's no oblivion. We will advance all the way to chapter number 5, and in chapter number 5 we get to resolve the next thing. First thing we will see is a new event, which is going to be Surge of Strength. Once per game during your action phase, you may pay 2 books of prairies or 1 book of mountains to unlock a feature of one of your allies. That is really, really awesome. Because the other thing we now get to do is we either get to take 1 ally or unlock one of the powers of one of our allies that we have out here on the board right now. I know purple, I know exactly what they're going to do. Purple is going to go ahead and they're going to upgrade their forest giant. And that'll allow them to use the other side of the board, which allows for much, much greater amounts of movement, which is what is very important in this game. Movement is very, very powerful. Now, for these other guys, the choices are a little bit different. I am thinking that I am going to take the library gnome and upgrade him, which allows him to, once per game, after your sage visits a universal fable place, resolve its effect 1 more time, which is super, very, very powerful. Over here for the red player, could take an ally, or I can upgrade one of my allies that I have here. I am thinking that I am going to take the Conjurer, because if I upgrade the Conjurer, I now have the ability to actually do conversions, which is we're getting pretty darn close to that point in the game now where we want to start performing conversions, because that's how we're going to get those victory points. But again, remember, we're doing the second scenario, so we want to have a couple of every single one of the books to get the most victory points. So now that we've done that, now we get to start with the red player's turn, who actually has a lot of decisions because we're actually out on the board pretty darn well. I don't think we actually want to do any more building of the land. I think we're going to start with some conversions right now. So I will take, first conversion is actually I'll do this easily. I'm going to take 4 books of mountains, which is effectively 2 conversions to go ahead and get 2 books of forests just like that. Now that we're done with our action, now we get to announce movement, and we are going to announce movement, I think, in the forest. So we'll move 1, 2, which allows us to visit that. We'll move 1, 2, and then the purple player will go ahead and move 1 space just like that. So now that we are visiting a fabled place, we will gain 3 books of prairies because we're on 3 different locations. So I'll take 3 books of prairies really, really quick. And you'll see that we are basically becoming the knowledge of the prairies kings right now. That will resolve that location. We have no other locations to resolve. There's no oblivion to resolve, so now we get to go to the purple player's turn. So for the purple player, for their turn, their action is going to be taking 1 point of movement. Now we don't have any extra movement because we haven't had any oblivion yet. So they're just going to take the 1 point of movement to move into this fabled location right here. Now this is a universal fable location, which is very, very good for other players. Not quite so good for them, but they still do get the benefit of it, which allows them to turn 3 books of one type into 2 books of the next level up, next tier up. So 3 prairies will turn into 2 mountains like that. So if I do a conversion next turn, I can also get 1 book of the sun, which is going to be great for us at that point. So now we've done that, we will return back onto the track there. Now we get to announce which land do we want to make movement in. I'm kind of at a crossroads here. I'm partially thinking that forest could be good. I'm also thinking mountains would actually be a little bit better, because if I can get this book resource of the 2 mountains, we're going to have a lot of things for conversions. I think it's going to work out best for us. So we'll announce mountains because it doesn't help any other players. They'll move 2 spaces and they'll be removed from the map just like that. And then this one will move 1, 2, just like that. Now, of course, a smarter player would have been able to take advantage of the Soul Guardian by having a book of prairies, but I didn't plan quite well enough for that, so I'm going to have to suffer the consequences of what I've decided to do. But I think we're going to have to just live with that, because that is probably going to work out for us for the better at this point in the game. So we have no oblivion. That is it for the purple. Now we get to go over to the yellow player, who needs to visit a universal fable place that is going to help them quite a bit. if I can manage to get to space number 10 while having a lot of resources, we can manage to get a lot of victory points because I can probably pull off 8 conversions as long as I have the victory points to do so. Got to have the resources. The question is, how do I get those resources? And I think the resources I want are probably going to be prairies because I can probably convert them a lot, or if I can get a couple different mountains. If I get a couple different mountains, that's actually going to be really, really good, and that's what I'm seeing possibly right here. I can maybe get a lot of victory points if I play this smart. So I think what we're going to do is as our action is we're going to add 1 onto the land itself. I think I'm going to take this prairie. Since there's only 1 prairie out there right now, that means it's going to cost me both of my prairies. I don't know if I want to do this quite yet, but you know what? Fortune favors the bold. I think we're going to place it actually, because we're going to do the Book of Forests. I think what I want to do is if I can visit the Book of Forests, that could possibly work out in our favor because we're going to get to do some extra conversions. I'm hoping, beyond hope, that this was the right decision for us. So we'll put our sage out here just like that, and that's going to be our action. Now we get to move over to the movement phase. Now, right now, if I took the movement phase, I can probably help us the most while not helping a lot of players if I do this just right. And I think that's what I'm going to do, I think we're going to announce forest. I think we're just about ready for that. So we're going to do 1, 2 in the forest and visit that fabled place. We'll do 1, 2, going to that location like that. Purple will move 1, red will move 1, and then red will move 1 more again, which is going to allow them to visit a fabled place, which they will happily do so just like that. So let's go and visit our fabled places. So this one right here is going to be the book or the House of Roots. Actually, correction, that's the tree serpent. So the tree serpent allows us to copy any place on the board right now. So if we are here, we can copy any location out there on the board right now, and we see that we have 1 Book of the Sun. So if I could get a Book of the Forest and then get another Book of the Forest, that'd actually be really darn good for us. But we can't just keep focusing on the Books of the Sun because we got to have the most of every individual book because that's going to be extra victory points too. So you have to juggle that a lot. That's why I like this scenario so much. This is probably my favorite scenario in the game. I think what we're going to do is we are going to copy... oh, tough calls. I think we're going to copy this location right here, which is going to be a House of Roots. We'll copy that location. That's going to give us 1 Book of Roots for the yellow player. Now that we visit that location, we are done. I will now resolve this location right here, which will allow them, the red player, to also gain 1 Book of Roots. So we're good right there now. All the locations have been visited. There are no Books of Oblivion. There's no Oblivion to worry about just yet. So that's going to end it for the orange player's turn. We get to advance 1 more chapter, and now we get to go back over to the red player's turn. Red has a lot of options, a lot of choices, but I think the easiest one is going to do conversion. I'm going to convert 2 prairies into 1 mountain. Then I'm going to convert 2 forests as my second conversion into 1 Book of the Sun. That's 1 victory point for us. Right now, red is winning the game. They actually are at 2, 3, 4 victory points versus 2. Actually, no, versus 3. So they're at 2 victory points, 3, 4 victory points, 3 victory points, and 1 victory point. So still a close game, but we do see how the game is unfolding right here. So we did a conversion for our action, so now we are going to do a movement. I think we are going to announce Forest. Forest will allow us to do, I don't know if I'm ready to do that transfer yet though. Tough call, tough call. I am liking the choices, but the problem is I got a lot of them. But if I put it, oops, I should have did this. If I put a land right there, I can continue that path on, so I don't want to announce prairies. I can't announce mountains because I don't have it, so I'm going to pick 4. So we're going to move 1, 2. Unfortunately, this helps the other players a lot. That's something you just can't avoid doing sometimes. So that'll go like that. You will, let's see here. You moved, so you're going to move 1, 2. You will visit that place. Oops, nope, sorry, you only move 1. Sorry. You move 1, you move 1, and you will copy. I think that was all the movement we need to do now. So now we got to solve or handle the fabled places. So yellow will copy a location, and they are going to copy this location right here to gain this Book of the Forest. Then we don't do anything here. We will go right here, which is going to be the terrain portal, which allows us to reposition any one location with at least one of your sages on it. Any location with at least one of your sages on it gets to be repositioned. I think, making sure I pull that off just like that, I think that is going to be the move that we are going to like the best. So that location is resolved. All the locations have been resolved. That is it for the red player's turn. I think we're done. The only thing I am thinking about doing is I should have did the snake queen before I took my turn. I think I will worry about that next action turn because that's not going to be a really big point of the turn. Let's go ahead and go over to the purple player. So a purple player is going to do movement or conversion. Movement or conversion. I think we're going to do... movement. So we'll take 1 point of movement and we'll visit this fabled place right there. I will take 1, 2, 3 books of mountains and convert that into 2 books of forests. That fabled place has been visited. That is my action. Now I get to announce movement. So for movement, I'm going to announce mountains. We'll move 1, slide into that fabled place, and we will take 2 mountains just like that, resetting after we're done with that. That will be it. There is no oblivion to occur. Now we get to go over to the orange player. Let's see here. 2 conversions. That would be wasted because we know we got lots of conversion power here very, very quickly. So gaining resources is probably our best bet at this point. So the yellow player has a lot of interesting decisions they need to make right now. They can't bring out a forest. We could do a conversion, a down conversion, and bring out a mountain, but I think that's actually a horrible, horrible idea because that's going to waste resources. I think what we need to actually do is just gain 2 books of prairies as our action. So for action, we will gain 2 books of prairies. Not the best decision we need to do, but I think that's going to help us the most. I think now what we're going to do is for our action phase, we are going to announce movement on the prairies, which will be 1, 2. These guys will move 1, which means they go from here to this spot right here, which means we're going to have oblivion, which means the forest giant is going to activate. So that was our complete turn. This will activate the oblivion. This will track up 1 right here, and then all of our locations are going to join ever closer, meaning that the spirit land is shrinking just a little bit. Now, I don't think that was the best thing we could have did, but actually, let me use an ally power before we do that. I think that was like that. If it doesn't matter, it's not, it doesn't matter. So before Oblivion, we will activate the Herald of the Land. It says, before Oblivion phase, declare movement in a location type different from the one you declared. We declared prairie, so now we're going to go ahead and declare in the mountain or forest. So forest will mean that this will move up 1. We will visit that fabled place. They should have been right there. We will go up on that space right here. These guys will move 1. This guy will move 1 right here, visiting fabled place. They will move here, and then they will be knocked off the map just like that. I think that'll work out for us just well. So this will go into Oblivion, but before we do that, we get to do a conversion. So before this conversion happens right here, we get 4 conversions if we want. We get to activate the Libernome power. It says we can perform a conversion or receive 2 books of prairies. I think we're going to do that. So we'll take the 2 books of prairies, and then we will activate this fabled place, which allows us to perform 4 conversions. So conversion 1 will allow these to turn into this. Conversion 2 will allow these to turn into this. Conversion 3 will allow us to turn these into this, and then conversion 4 will allow us to turn these and into this just like that. So now we finish those conversions like that. Does anybody else have any special locations? Yes, we have this right here. Change 3 for 2 of the next tier up. So we'll change these 3 for 2 books of the mountains, just like that. Resolving that location. All locations have been resolved. Now oblivion will go ahead and occur, and then we will shrink the pass down. And that'll be it for the orange player's turn. We now get to advance to turn 7, where again we get a decision if all the players want to gain an ally or if they want to increase the power of all of the, or one of the allies they have right now. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and give allies to all our players. So again, going to do this easy for these players. They won't get a choice, but I will show you for the red player the choices that are available. And again, I'm doing this just to save time. I don't want you to sit here and watch me agonize over 3 different players, 3 different allies, trying to pick 9 different allies. That'd just slow things down way, way too darn much. So we have the Seuss here. When adding a location from the top of the deck, choose one from the top 2 cards. In this new location, one of your sages takes 2 steps, return the other location back to the top of the deck, not showing it to other players. That's very powerful. I don't know if that's going to be good this late in the game, because the red player is not going to be doing a lot of adding land. Right now, they're going to start focusing on conversions because they want to win the game. The Wind Bugler, when your sage enters a new path, they take 1 additional movement. I will get 1 possible use out of that. That'll probably be the limit of it at that point. Finally, when a Swamp Witch joins you, place her tokens face up. After your sage visits a fabled place shown on the left of a face-up Swamp Witch token, receive what is shown on the right and turn it face down. So basically what that is you have the Swamp Witch tokens right here. And when you visit, when I visit that location right there, I'm going to flip this over just like that. So that's actually not too bad either. I think there's still some movement I'm going to get. I could possibly get 3 points of movement off of this. I think what I'm going to do is Swamp Witch was probably the better choice here, but I think instead of taking the Swamp Witch, I'm going to do the Wind Bugler just to show you all the possible options in this game, just show you how much variety there is in this game itself. Plus, I don't know what that last event card is, and that could also influence things as well. So we took the Wind Bugler. That is what we are going to take. For you, you're going to get the Sun Charity tier once per turn during your action phase if you have Books of Wisdom of any 3 different types. You get 1 point of movement. If you have all 4 types, you get 2 points of movement. So we get lots of movement power, which is always nice to have. Put this just like that so we can still see it. And then over here, we got the Pathfinder. When your sage is about to return to your reserve from a dead-end path in the mountains, pay 1 prayer to move them to any path in the next location instead. Ooh, to any path in the next location instead. So if there's 2 paths, that'd be great. This stage continues movement if they have unspent movement left. Wow, that is such a great, great ally to add into the game here. Let's go ahead and scoot things over just a little bit so we keep seeing all the things that we have here and see all of the allies we have. Hopefully that's on the camera good enough, just like that. So that is chapter 7. Let's go and start chapter 7 for the red player now. I think what we're going to do is simply do 2 conversions. So I will take 2 or 4 of those to go ahead and gain 2 of these books of mountains, just like that. I think you see where we are going with the strategies at this point. We have the most prairies. We have the most mountains. If I can manage to get the most forests, that'll be 6 victory points plus any books of knowledge we may have from the Sun books at the end of the game. So that's going to be part of our strategy. We did a conversion, so now we're going to do movement. We're going to announce movement in the forests. So we will go 1, 2. We will go 1, 2, and since we crossed into a new path, we're going to take 1 additional point of movement, putting us right there just like that. And I think what I will do is to keep my lead on these. I will put the Snake Queen just like that, and I'll put the other Snake Queen just like that. I think that's going to help us out quite a bit. There's no oblivion. Movement is finished for the red player. I should have did those during the action phase. Sorry, I went out of order here. Now, orange will move and get kicked off the board. They will move. Oh, they would love to do a conversion, but guess what? They cannot. So red effectively cheated the orange player out of taking any good actions. That's a good strategy. Purple moved down one more spot like this. And now the game is getting very, very interesting. And we're also getting pretty close to the end of the game. So we need to figure out our strategies and be as efficient as possible here. But that is it for the red player. Now we get to go to purple. Purple has 2 extra points of movement, which is going to be nice for them. Just got to figure out how to use it as efficiently as possible, or if I even want to use it. I am thinking that we are going to do conversions. I will do, see here, 1 forest, send 2 forests into 1 Book of the Sun, just like that. Now we get 2 points of movement. I am thinking we're going to go down to number 4 from the giant, just like that. And now we will announce movement. Do we want to move in forests? Nope, I think we're going to announce movement in the mountains because that's going to give us extra movement. So we will announce mountain movement, 1, 2. That will remove this. That will announce that, give us 2 points of movement, and that mountain will be removed from the game. I think that is a better move. Yeah, I think that's going to be a better move for us. And then we are actually going to be done. Now we get to go over to the orange player. Orange will take 2 books of prairies. Announce movement in the prairies. They'll move 1, 2. This will allow them to move 1. That'll end the movement phase. And now we'll go ahead and advance to the next chapter. Next event is going to be the bottom because we are on the 3 feather event right here. So we'll look at the bottom path for this event card. While your sage is visiting a fabled place connected to the last landmark on a main path, instead of returning this sage to the landmark, you may move them to the main path in the next location, regardless of those locations are linked or not. That is actually pretty darn cool. And that means that movement is just going to be ever so much more interesting, which means this event is not going to be the one that's not going to be in the game. So red is going to do conversions. We will spend 2 of these to make 1 forest. We're still in the lead on mountains, so let's spend 2 more to make 1 more forest. So right now, as things stand, we have the most prairies, we have the most mountains, we have the most forests, so we are actually looking really good. There's a good chance that red might win the game here. We'll find out how this is going to play out in just a moment. So for the red player's turn, I'm thinking that we are just going to announce movement. We'll take 1 sage and move them right there. They will hop over to this location, which is going to give them 2 books of prairies, or 1 book of prairie and 1 point of movement. I'm thinking the 2 prairie books is what I want, because we will get the 1 from the fairy inn right here, plus we get 1 more from the snake queen, which will be 2 books of prairies for us, just like that. Don't forget, book of the fairy inn right there gives us 1. Actually, I got 1 more. I forgot about that. Almost cheated myself. We get 1 book of prairies for every location that has at least 1 of our sages on it, plus the fact that we also have that ability of the snake queen right there. So now we will announce movement in the forest. Let's see how this is going to play out for us. So we'll announce movement in the forest. This will go from the 5 to the 7. We'll go from the 4 to the 5, and we'll slide over and visit this location. Yellow, unfortunately, will be kicked off of the map. Purple will move 1. Visiting that location does us absolutely no good because there's no location over here for us to visit. That basically allows us to put a sage in the next location over. Unfortunately, there is no location over. Let's go and slide the map over just a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see on the camera right here. And we see that the board is just about to shrink a little bit again. So now that we've done that, nobody wants to take that action, so we're going to take this action right here. So we would gain 2. Plus, the snake queen will allow us to move 1 or take another prairie. I think we're just going to take the 2 prairies, take a 3 and put a 1 back, and then we will just simply take the 1 point of movement like that. No other locations to visit. That is it for the red player's turn. I don't want to use a hidden path right there. Actually, do I want to use a hidden path right there? While you're visiting a fabled place connected to the last landmark. Oh, no, it's not the last landmark, so I couldn't use it anyway. So not going to use that. So now we're going to go over here. Before that happens, we have oblivion, which means this will advance just like this. That forest will be the first forest that's actually removed from the game, and that's going to make these paths now connect. Okay, making sure I didn't forget anything. Purple player's turn. On their turn, they have not a lot of options. We need to get victory points. Conversions are not going to help us. Victory points are what we are going to need right now. So, can't add a forest, can't add a mountain. The only thing that's really open to us right now is getting 2 books of prairies. Then we get to move 3 spaces thanks to the giant. So during action phase, we will move 3 spaces. We will go 1, 2, 3, visit that spot. It gives us 2 mountains. Not looking so bad anymore. Now the purple player for the movement, actually they're seeing that their chances of winning the game are really getting diminished, but at least they can still take a couple actions and try to score some victory points because they still do have some possible potential for gaining some victory points. But since we got the 2 mountains there, let's go to move our sage back on the path. Since we've done the movement that we get during action phase from the friendly giant here, now we actually had to pick a movement. Fortunately, the thing we do is pick movement in the prairies. That's going to be 2 points movement. Fortunately, this prairie doesn't connect to anything, so that sage is just going to be removed from the board right there. Although I guess I could have picked forest, which actually, that would actually be a smarter idea, because I completely forgot that I had this sage down here underneath. So we're going to pick forests, which is probably going to help the red player, but it's also going to help us at least get 2 more prairies. We may be able to use those on the last turn. So let's go and announce forest as our movement. So since we are the purple player, we'll move 2 spaces and we'll visit that fabled place. Red will move 1, red will move 1, and they will decide to visit that fabled place, and then red will move 1 more space right here. Let's go and handle the purple player since it's their turn first. Or actually, so I don't forget, I'll probably do them last. Why don't I go ahead and handle the red player first right here. So the red player happens to be at this location right here, which allows them to copy any other location out of the board. It's called the tree serpent, and allows us to copy any fabled places currently out on the board. But plus, don't forget, we also have our snake queen out there, which allows us to either get 1 prairie or 1 point of movement. I'm probably going to use the movement, haven't decided quite yet, because they do get 1 more round. So we are going to copy another location. I am seeing that we are actually tied on mountain books. So let's go ahead and copy this location right here, which will give us 2 mountain books. The other option, which is probably smarter, would be to go ahead and take 4 conversions. I think that's actually going to be the much smarter thing to do, would be to copy that location. It allows us to do 4 conversions. I'm going to do that. That's going to be the much smarter play because next turn I'll get conversions. No, because I can't gain access. Oh, everything I want to do. Okay, I just want to do everything because everything's so much fun. Go with the original plan here. Let us go ahead and copy this, which will give us 2 mountains to guarantee that we'll get the 2 victory points from having the most mountains at the end of the game because we'll have more than anybody else. Plus, we'll also get a prairie or 1 point of movement. We're pretty much going to pick mountains, so we're going to get 2 points of movement anyways. So why don't I go ahead and get the prairie book? That's probably going to be the smarter decision right here, right now. For the red player, it's still the purple player's turn though. That was it for the visiting place for the red player. Let's go ahead and visit this place right here as a purple player. Purple player has 2 locations that they happen to be, or 2 land locations. They happen to be in the spirit realm. That means that the Fairy Inn is going to give them 2 more books of prairies right there. We got to do lots of conversions pretty darn quickly if we want to get some victory points. But that is going to be it for our movement. We will return over here, signifying that we have finished our movement. We're finished with all the visiting places. Only thing left to do is oblivion unless we have anything that we want to do. That actually could have been very good for me to take advantage of. Once per turn during your action phase, we pass that. I forgot to use the sun charioteer. Oh well, too late. That's what happens when we're playing too many teams at once. Sometimes we forget a little bit of the actions. But the smart thing I would have done is I would have used a sun charioteer during my action phase, but unfortunately I forgot it. I'm not going to retcon it. Not at this point, because I'm really just trying to give you a good idea of how the game plays. Let's go ahead and go over to the orange player right now. And on the orange player's turn, don't have a lot of options. We know that they actually have 2 more rounds left. This round and then the next final chapter, which will be the final chapter of the game. We know we're leading on the sun books, or the books of sun knowledge books, but it doesn't mean that we are winning the game. So what can we do right now to help ensure that we are going to win the game? If I take 2 points of movement, I am going to gain 2 mountains, which puts me tied for second place, which is still nothing in this case. But it might give me some resources on the final round. So I could do the movement, or I could bring a land mass out into play, out into the spirit realm. The question is, do any of these locations have things that we can do quickly within 1 or 2 turns before we lose out on everything? We know we have the Herald of the Lands. I know I have the Library Gnome, and I also have the Pathfinder. The Pathfinder could actually help me, possibly. No, I don't think the Pathfinder is even going to help at this point. I could sit here and deliberate and probably try to figure out how to eke out a couple more points, but I don't want to drag on this video because, like I said, the basic idea of this video is just to help you understand how the game plays. I think you're getting a good, strong understanding of the game. This is definitely a game that rewards good strategic gameplay, using all the combinations of your allies to make them work to your benefit. So we see how the Red player is taking complete advantage of their allies to gain those extra bonuses and everything like that, and it's helping them quite a bit. That's good, smart play. So let's just go ahead and do this very, very quickly. Instead of taking any resources or doing any conversions, I'm simply going to take my 1 point of move, which allows me to go here. I will visit that Fabled location, which will give me 2 more books of the mountains. We'll return over here. Now, the only thing left to do is to go ahead and announce movement, unless I have any actions I want to do here. Was not a universal place. When you're about to return to your reserve, I'm probably going to take advantage of the Pathfinder right here. So we'll do 2 points of movement. The purple will also do 2 points of movement, or 1 point of movement. We got the 2 points of movement. Either way, that path is going to come to an end. The nice thing here is the Pathfinder card here is when your sage is about to return to your reserve from a dead-end path in a mountains. Oops, not a mountains. Not going to happen. I forgot the Pathfinder for mountains, so that doesn't help us at all either. So that is going to end the movement for all those players. That means that this is going to go into oblivion, which means purple will have 2 points of movement. We'll go ahead and remove that prairie from the board, and that will be it for the next, or the end of the round. Final chapter is going to start, and basically this is going to be the last action round for all of our players, starting with the red player. So the red player is deciding that we have enough resources that what we want to do is we want to do conversions. We're not going to do any buying of any land masses or anything like that because we're going to get most of our victory points right here, right now from doing conversions. We know that we can do 2 conversions right here, right now, and possibly end up getting lots of victory points here. So I will convert 2 of these mountains, which still ties us, meaning that we'll get 1 and 1 as long as nobody else gets any mountains, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. So that 1 conversion will give us 1 forest, if I can find a single forest. Then we'll take 2 of these forests right here, we will cash them in, and we will get 1 book of the sun. That'll be it for action. Now we get to do a movement, and obviously the only thing we can pick is forest. So let's go ahead and move 1, 2, and that'll allow us to go right here. Let's go 1, and sure, why not? We'll move down in here, and then we'll go 1, 2 into this location right here. Actually, no, we'll come to this location right here, and then they will move 1 space forward just like this. Let's go ahead and resolve all these locations very, very quickly. I'll go ahead and resolve this one really quickly. We will decide that we are going to copy this location right here because we want to get 1 book of the forest. That way we have the most forest into the game, so we get the most victory points, most likely. We are also going to use movement. Won't do us any good, so I'll just take 1 more book of prairies. And that will finish off that location right there. Now we get to do this location, which allows us to do 4 conversions. I'll take these 2 to go in here. That'll be 1 conversion right there. I'll take these 2 to do this, which will be a 2nd conversion. Let's see here. If I do this, I could get a 3rd conversion, and sorry, I should have only spent 2, not 4. So that's the 3rd conversion, and then I have 1 more conversion to do, and I am going to take these 2 books right here, and then I will get 1 forest right here. Now remember, we're doing a 2nd scenario, so it's not the most sun books, it's having the most of every individual category, every single tier of books, which is going to give us the victory points. Red is playing the game very, very smart here. So that was that location right there. That'll finish that off. This location will give us 2 more books of prairies. I don't think we really need to worry about at this point because we have so many prairies. We're basically dominating the prairie game at this point. That will be it for the red player's turn. We did the movement. There is no oblivion. I'm not going to worry about our special powers right now because none of them are actually going to trigger. We did take advantage of the Snake Queen, which helped us quite a bit, and that is it for the red player's turn. Now we get to go to the purple player's turn. Now the purple player is basically looking at doing conversions so they can at least get a couple of victory points. So let's go ahead and do that for 1 victory point, which means we now have the most mounts, which is going to be worth 2 victory points for us, at least in the game. As long as the orange player doesn't manage to get any mounts, we should be fine. Unfortunately, they're going to do that, so that's not going to work out too well for us, but hey, that's okay. Now we'll go ahead and announce movement, which will be very, very nice for us, and we will go ahead and announce movement in the forest, since that's basically our only option at this point. So we will move 2, and yes, we will happily visit that location. Red will move 1, red will move 1 over here, and then red will move 1 right there. Now that we have handled that spot right there, we will go ahead and visit this special Fabled place right there, which will go ahead and give us 1 green book right there. So we're now in the lead on the green book, so that's actually a good thing as well. Unfortunately, I don't think there's really much else we can do. I forgot to do the 2 points of movement. Would that have made a difference? Yes, it would have. We would have got to there. Doesn't matter. I should do it just to show you the gameplay. So I should have actually spent that as my movement to move here to get the book, and then now I would actually do the movement turn, which would allow me to go there. Not going to worry about shuffling anything. It's not really going to matter. It's not going to make a final difference in the game, I don't think, at this point. So that basically is it. I don't think anything else. I can get another point of movement, which isn't going to help us. I really don't think there's anything else. I mean, I could use my cards for little abilities, but nothing right now. Oh, wait, no, I take it back. Something would help me. I could have gotten 1 more Book of Forest. Don't need it. It's not going to matter. I'm still going to get the 2 victory points. I'm still in the lead, so I'm not going to worry about that. I don't think that's going to make a difference. Let's go ahead and end the turn for the purple player. There was no oblivion, so now we have to go over to the orange player's turn. Now, the orange player doesn't have a lot of options right now because they're basically judging what they have versus the other players. Obviously, putting another land in play, it's going to be a total waste of actions because we're basically going to be burning resources for anything that we can't get further along the path to getting resources. We don't have enough movement built up, and by doing so, we might actually end up helping the red player even more, which we don't want to do. So for our action, I think what we're going to do is just simply do a conversion. And that's actually going to allow us to push enough of the books of the mountains to score 1 victory point and tear down the purple player from gaining 2 victory points and only gaining 1 victory point. You'll see how that works when we go in the scoring of the scenario itself. So let's go ahead and use both these books of the prairies. We know we're not getting victories at points off that anyways. And then let's go ahead and take 1 of these books of the mountains. That puts us at 3 books of the mountains, and now we get to, that's our action phase, now we get to go to our movement phase. Now during the movement phase, now the rules don't specify if you can't actually do this. The very specifics of the rules themselves say that you must pick 1 location type. Then all your sages on all those location types must move 2 spaces, and all the opponents must move 1. It doesn't specifically say that you can't pick a location type that's actually not in play. And I haven't been able to find a judgment on this, and this has actually happened before because it's actually a strategy tactic you can do. So my understanding is that you can pick a land type that's not in play. If I am wrong about that, I'm sure somebody will correct me, and I don't think it's make that huge of a difference, but at least in this scenario, it will actually make a difference for the orange player. So they're going to go ahead and announce the plain type of prairie, which means nobody's going to move because there's no prairies left on the board, and that's basically going to be the last move of the game, and that's going to be the end of our complete chapters. Now we got to move into the epilogue. Now, generally speaking, during the epilogue, the player who has the most books of the sun would be the grand winner of the game. So if we were playing the standard game, red would win, orange would actually come in second place, and then the purple player would come in last place because they actually have 1 book of the sun. Like I said earlier, though, we are playing the second scenario. And the second scenario actually has a slightly different scoring method, which is why I actually enjoy it quite a bit. So the winner is actually determined differently than usual. The players are actually going to figure out who has the most of every single type of the specific books of knowledge. So whoever has the most books of prairies is going to gain 2 victory points. If there's a tie, both tie players get 1. We're going to do that from the mountains. We're going to do that for the forts. And then the sun tiles themselves, the sun books are actually going to score as it would normally. So as you see right here, this can actually make a big difference for how the victory points come across, and that's why I really do enjoy this scenario. It's one of the more advanced scenarios of the game. I actually like the second scenario, and I actually like the 5th scenario, my favorite scenarios in the game. at least so far from as I played the game. So let's go and add up all these victory points. We see that the red player has the most books of prairie over any other player. That's 2 victory points. We see when it comes into the mountains, they don't have the most amounts. They're not going to get any victory points for that. When we come over here to the forest, we see that they don't have the most amount of forest. They're actually tied, or actually they lose out to the purple player. So we only have 2 victory points right now. Plus 3 books of knowledge is going to be a total of 5 victory points. So just to signify this, I'm going to get rid of all this, and let's just signify that we happen to have 5 victory points. And we'll stick this off to the side so we can see what our true victory point total happens to be at the end of the game. Now let's go ahead and score things for the purple player right here, right now. Purple player obviously did not win when it came to the prairies. We didn't win when it came to the mountain books, but we did manage to tie, so that's going to be worth 1 victory point for us. We did manage to win when it comes into the books of the forest, so that's going to be 2 more victory points for a total of 3. Plus we got 1 book of the sun, that's going to be a total of 4 victory points for us. So let's go ahead and modify or show that we got 4 victory points right like this. Actually a very close game. Now let's finally go over to the orange player. The orange player definitely didn't win on the prairies. They did not win when it came to the forest. They didn't win when it came to the mountains either, but they did manage to tie, which is going to give them 1 victory point. Plus the 2 books of the sun they have right now is going to give them a total of 3 victory points. So in the grand scheme of things, you see that this was actually an extremely close game. Even though the red players seemed like they were tearing ahead, getting a whole bunch of books of knowledge, they actually were keeping the game pretty darn close because the other players were doing various different tactics, were actually working out for them very, very well. 3 victory points, 4 victory points, 5 victory points. In my mind, that's an extremely close game. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this video series looking at Fabled The Spirit Lands. If you have any comments or questions, make sure to leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I will do my best to answer those as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me off the shelf board game reviews. That is otsbgr@gmail.com. I do my best to answer those emails as quickly as I can. You also feel free to support the channel on Patreon. Just $1 in the tip jar is a great way to say thanks. This channel is 100% sponsor free. That means everything you see comes in my own pocketbook. While I'm not boring with sponsorships and commercials running in between my videos here, it also means I have to pay for things out of my own pocketbook. You can help me cover my costs. Toss $1 in the tip jar, or even better, 2 seconds of your time and 2 mouse clicks. Click that like button. Click that subscribe button. It tells YouTube analytics that this is a great channel worth watching for other people. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed this video series. Make sure you check out the other videos in the series covering the solo gameplay, a quick overview, a review on actually how to play the basic game of Fabled The Spirit Lands. As always, thanks for watching.